Every animal on Earth dies shortly after it can no longer reproduce. Every animal, except one. Human women live for decades after their fertility ends. No other primate does this. Biologists called it a malfunction for nearly a century, a glitch in the code, an evolutionary dead end. They were wrong. And the real answer, hiding in the fossil record for 1.8 million years, might explain why you exist at all. Here's what Darwin's framework told us. Evolution is ruthless. It rewards reproduction. It discards everything else. So a body that lives 30, 40 years past the point of bearing children makes no sense. It consumes resources. It contributes nothing to the gene pool. By every classical rule of natural selection, grandmothers should not exist. For decades, scientists accepted that. They called menopause a side effect of modern longevity, an accident, a bug, not a feature. Then, in 1997, an anthropologist named Kristen Hawkes went to Tanzania to study one of the last hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth, the Hadza. And what she saw changed everything we thought we knew about human evolution. Hawkes was there to study men, specifically hunting. The theory at the time was that male hunters provided food for families, driving cooperation, language, and social bonding. But the data kept pointing somewhere else. When she tracked who was actually feeding the children, especially the weaned children, the ones too young to feed themselves but no longer nursing, it wasn't the fathers. It was the grandmothers. Postmenopausal women every single day outforaged everyone in camp. They dug tubers for hours. They processed food. They fed not just their own grandchildren but entire family clusters. And the children with active grandmothers, they were healthier. They grew faster. They survived at dramatically higher rates. Hawkes had a name for what she was seeing. She called it the grandmother hypothesis.
To understand why this matters, you have to understand how strange human childhood actually is. Every other great ape, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, weans their young and immediately becomes pregnant again. The previous child is independent almost instantly. There is no gap. Human children are helpless for years. We are born with brains only 30% developed. We cannot walk, feed ourselves, or survive without constant care for the first several years of life. We are, by primate standards, absurdly, dangerously dependent. And yet, human mothers have shorter birth spacings than chimps. We have babies closer together. How is that possible? You need someone else to feed the older child while the mother nurses the newborn. You need a grandmother. Hawkes and her team ran the numbers. They built a computational model of early human populations, comparing groups with grandmothering to groups without. In groups without grandmothers, the math worked like every other primate. Population grew slowly, children were spaced far apart, lifespans stayed short. In groups with grandmothers, everything changed. Birth spacing shortened, more children survived. The population expanded faster. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The model predicted that within 60,000 years of grandmothering becoming common, human lifespans would nearly double. Not because of medicine, not because of agriculture, because of grandmothers freeing up mothers to have more children, who grew up healthier, who lived longer, who had their own grandmothers. It was a loop, a self-reinforcing evolutionary engine running for almost 2 million years, quietly built from the labor of old women. Now, here's where it gets stranger. If grandmothers were this critical, evolution wouldn't just keep them alive, it would design children to need them. And that's exactly what the fossil record suggests happened. Around 1.8 million years ago, something unusual appears in Homo erectus fossils. Brain size jumps, but more importantly, the period of childhood dependency lengthens. Human children start taking longer to grow up. Anthropologists used to see this as a consequence of bigger brains, more to learn, longer childhood. But some researchers argue it runs the other way. Longer childhoods require grandmothers, and longer childhoods, with more time to learn, to observe, to absorb culture, produced smarter humans. The grandmother didn't just feed the child. She may have built the conditions for human intelligence itself. Now look at what we've done. In the last 80 years, the Western world systematically dismantled the multi-generational household. We built nursing homes. We scattered families across cities. We created a culture that treats elderly women as burdens, as people past their purpose. We designed a society that structurally removes grandmothers from the lives of children. And simultaneously, childhood mental health collapsed. Working mothers reported impossible levels of stress. Birth rates in every developed nation began falling off a cliff. Demographers call it a fertility crisis. Economists call it a labor shortage. Maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe we broke a 2-million-year-old system and called it modernity. The grandmother hypothesis is still debated in academic circles. Not everyone agrees on the mechanism, but the fossil record, the tribal data, and the computational models all point to the same uncomfortable conclusion. The most important figure in human evolutionary history may not have been the strongest hunter or the most fertile mother. It may have been the old woman, past her reproductive prime, quietly digging tubers in the dirt so her daughter's children could survive one more season. Evolution didn't make a mistake when it kept her alive. It knew exactly what it was doing. Drop one in the comments. Do you think modern society's loss of the multi-generational family is connected to the mental health crisis? I want to see what you think.